How many of us have heard that meditation can help us stay more happy, be at more peace, and just live a better life in general? I think most of us have heard that. But how many of us have actually done meditation? And I'm not talking about doing it once or twice, I'm talking about having maintained a consistent practice of it. I would say very few of us have managed to do that. So, why is it that? If it is so well known that meditation is so beneficial for us, why do so many of us fail to keep up at it? Hi, I'm Abhishek, and for the past 5 years, I have been practicing meditation and self examination consistently. And I can honestly say that these practices have transformed my life in ways that I never thought were possible. And I would like to share a little story about myself. Most of my life from the end of childhood till around mid to late 20s was spent in a lot of misery. And interestingly, that was all self created. For some reason, I used to view the universe as an enemy of sorts. And so did it happen. At the university, I hated the courses that I was studying. I virtually had no friends, very limited social life. But the worst of all was that I was suffering from a terrible, almost constant anxiety disorder. I was always fearful of almost everything around me. What could go wrong, and believing the worst case scenarios will become the truth. And so, just needless to say, it was not an enjoyable life at all. Now, cut to the present moment, and I feel like I'm at a place in life where at most times I feel at peace. The constant anxiety that I used to feel has almost vanished, and it gave a lot of space for the clarity of thought to come in. Now, this is something that was totally unthinkable for me even 5 years back, because most of my life, as I said, was lived so dreadfully that I used to think that this is it, this is how life is for me. But now it's the difference of night and day. And I'm not saying that I'm happy 24/7, not at all, but it's a far, far better state of mind and a much more enjoyable life than before. Now, I will be skipping over some of the obvious things that are needed for a good life, such as a regular source of income, a few good supportive friends, etc. You probably know all of that. I want to touch upon something more fundamental. You see, one of the major realizations I had over the years was this. We don't really need a lot going on in our lives to create a deeply fulfilling life. In fact, I would go on to say that most of the social media influencers trap us in believing that we need to over-engineer our lives, which is not only unnecessary, but it creates more stress and anxiety than it solves. What I have realized is you basically need three foundational stones in life. Number one is a physical discipline to keep your body healthy. Number two is a mental discipline to keep your mind sharp, especially against the today's day and age of doom scrolling and brain rot going on. Number three is a meditation and self-examination discipline. Now, what I have realized is that most people can do the first one fairly easily. That is, they will join a gym and do their strength trainings and weightliftings with fair regularity. That one is relatively easy to do. A few people can manage to do the second one as well, which is to maintain a mental discipline to keep the mind sharp, such as limiting their social media usage. But very few people can do the third one. Like most people struggle with the third one, which is to maintain a meditation practice. And I think that comes down to this one particular belief. The belief that meditation is something that is very different from the rest of our lives. That spirituality is something that is very different and goes against the grain of our worldly activities. Now, this belief is not completely false as well. I mean, anyone who has ever tried to meditate would have felt that it is something that seems very different from the rest of the activities that they do. And this creates a belief in mind that meditation is something that requires tremendous effort. And I'm here to break that belief. So here's what I have learned over the past 5 years. The material and the spiritual are not different at all. They are the one and the same. Understand this. Material success is greatly helped by a spiritual practice. And spiritual success is greatly helped by participating fully into the material world. This relationship between the material and the spiritual is best understood by asking ourselves this question. How much more efficient would we be if we were not anxious all the time? Now, I sadly cannot remember who said this quote, but it cuts right into the undivisible nature of the material and the spiritual. You see, most of us are not held back by a lack of intelligence or a lack of hard work, as the hustle culture would like to have you believe. Rather, most of us are held back by our inability to handle negative emotions correctly, because that is something that is never taught to us. And this ability to handle our negative emotions correctly and then to get to a point of clarity is what I call an effective spiritual and meditation practice. When you strip away all the mystical and mysterious language, meditation and spirituality essentially come down to a few simple principles. Number one, understanding the difference between your true self and your mind. And this is done through self examination. And number two, as I mentioned, the ability to handle our negative emotions effectively. I will go into the depths of how you can create a meditation and spiritual routine that is uniquely tailored to you in later videos. But if this is the only video of mine that you will ever watch, I want to recommend you two things. First, read a book called Letting Go by Dr. David Hawkins. It teaches something very unique and fundamental: the levels of consciousness and how we can move through them to become increasingly happier. It teaches how our mind, body, and consciousness are interconnected in creating our experience. This one right here. This book teaches something very simple yet profound. That is, instead of trying to change or fix your negative emotions, you simply learn to let them go. And you do this by feeling them fully without resistance. Now, I know it sounds almost too simple, but the mechanism that it reveals about how we create our own suffering is absolutely mind blowing. It integrates so well in your life that you do not feel like you are doing meditation. And that is why I mentioned at the beginning of this video that the belief that meditation is something that requires tremendous effort outside of your daily life is a lie. Now, I will obviously be talking a lot more about it in the coming videos, but yes, this is the technique that I would recommend you start with. Secondly, develop a habit of regular journaling that is geared towards self-examination. What does this mean? Well, this is not a dear diary or a gratitude journal, although they are effective in their own ways. The type of journaling that I recommend is more like a brain dump. That is, you write down your thoughts and feelings as they come up, raw, without editing, without judging yourself, and without any agenda with them. Which means you do not try to make them go away, or you do not judge yourself for having them. You just write them down as they are coming up. A word pad in your computer or on a physical diary if you feel comfortable to do so. What it does is, it gradually cleans out the constant noise from your mind. You see, I personally have been a very confused kid throughout most of my life. And I have made poor decisions at almost every critical stage of life. Over the years, I realized that was because my mind was making too much noise at almost all the times. And only when it gradually started to clean itself through reflection and journaling did I start seeing what is right for me. Because obviously only then I have the space for clarity of thought to come in. Now, if you do decide to start any of these techniques, I have to tell you that the beginning is going to be the hardest. Because right now, most probably, your mind is not used to being observed from a distance quietly, which will be the case if you do decide to do meditation and self-examination techniques. But here's the key. Start with extremely small amounts of time. Start with doing 10 minutes of these practices daily. And you will see that the benefits that they bring will automatically, almost effortlessly compel you to do more. So, this was the tip of the iceberg, and in the coming videos I will be talking more in depth about how we can turn these practices into sustainable routines that actually stick. But for now, just remember that you do not need complex techniques, expensive therapies, or even meditation retreats. Most of the times, the most profound changes come from simplest practices that are consistently applied. See you in the next one.